Week 8, how much light do we need? Lumen is quantity of light. And when we talk about lumens, we also discuss foot candles. And you were measuring foot candles when you did your daylighting project. And at that time, we had discussed that a foot candle is when one candle or one lumen is 1 foot away from 1 foot square surface area. So when that light, the light that hits that 1 foot square, that is considered the 1 foot candle. So it's one candle or one lumen 1 foot away from 1 square foot area, and the light that comes from that to that square foot area is considered 1 lumen. So the foot candle is the intensity of light, the output 1 foot away from on a 1 square foot area. Lux, again, like we did when we measured with our phones, the lux is the metric equivalent. Lumen is brightness as perceived by human eye. It's not a physical quantity. So it's very difficult to actually determine because it is a little bit like, it's like decibels for hearing. Lumen is same for light. So again, lumen is the light output or the brightness, and lumen is 600 lumens is always 600 lumens. It does not depend on the type of bulb. When we studied the CRI's color rendering index, incandescent had an excellent color rendering index, close to 100. LEDs go anywhere from 80 to 90s, and fluorescents are very poor, probably 70s to 80s max. When we talk about lumens, it does not matter what type of a bulb it is. If I have 600 lumens brightness in LED bulb, or I have 600 lumens brightness in incandescent bulb, they both are 600 lumens, same brightness. Now LED is going to use less wattage to produce that 600 lumens than incandescent, but the brightness level is same no matter what bulb type. And the watts is then the energy used. So how much light does the lamp use to create the lumens? When we looked at the LEDs, they could produce 800 lumens for, let's say, using 9 watts, where our incandescent light bulb will use about 60 watts to create the same lumens. Lumen and watt ratio varies depending on the bulb, and LED is still the most efficient one. So lumens is the light output, how bright it is, and watts is the energy used to create the lumens. Here is something that today in our field trip came up as well. This is a chart that shows how many watts incandescent uses to produce specific lumens versus LED. And it also shows halogen and your compact fluorescence. We don't have to look at those as much. since we are all sticking to the LED nowadays because it is so energy efficient. So again, if we're looking at our 60-watt bulb, which lumen output is about 800 lumens. In an incandescent, it'll need that 60 watts to create it, but in an LED, only 12 watts to create the 800 lumens, or to produce the 800 lumens. Wattage equivalency is when we discuss LED versus incandescents that we used to use. We knew those incandescents by the wattage. But now, because we are using LEDs, we talk about the lumens. When you go to purchase light bulbs, you will see them advertised as 60-watt wattage equivalency, meaning I might be buying a bulb that's an LED 9-watt that creates the 800 lumens. But because we are so used to the incandescent numbers, that bulb is sold as wattage equivalency to 60 watt. So even though the bulb is a 9 watt bulb LED, it can have the 60 watt equivalent on the box because they are trying to still use the old wattage as the sales tool, because that's what most people understood. We are coming around to understanding the lumens better, but it's still a little bit challenging. So that is why some of the bulbs are sold as wattage equivalency, so it makes sense to us. Efficacy is how many lumens does the bulb produce for each watt that it uses. This is just taking a step further your how many watts does it take to create the lumens. The higher the number, the better. The higher the number, the more energy efficient. If you specify bulbs that are Energy Star, which you should always, those are always very high in efficacy. Again, the efficacy calculation is very simple. It's lumens divided by watts to tell you how many lumens it takes, how efficient the bulb is, how many watts does it take to create that 1 lumen. And when we look at how much light is required for space, when we start documenting our lighting as well as making actual decisions about fixtures and bulbs, we will follow required lumens for the space. Those are established by IES, which is Illumination Engineering Society. They have commercial and residential standards for lighting, and each space has its own requirement for the required lumens for that space. There are many different ways to calculate your lumens. We are going to just use a very simple method, which is taking square footage of the room, calculating the length by width of the room, That gives you the square footage. Then you will go to the IES chart and determine the recommended foot candles for that room type or the room use. And you will calculate the recommended lumens for that space by multiplying the square footage times the required foot candles. This is a very simple method. It is not to be used as an exact, but it is used as an estimate to give you an idea how many lumens you need for the space. Again, room square feet times required foot candles equals required lumens for the space. As an example, if you have a 100 square foot living room, which is tiny, 100 square foot living room, according to IES chart, living room requires anywhere from 10 to 20 foot candles. The foot candle is the amount of light for the space. IES says in the living room you should have anywhere from 10 to 20 foot candles. It is not very high task area, so the foot candles are fairly low. When you have a range like that, I always calculate it towards the highest number, so I would use the 20 foot candles instead of the 10, just to be safe. I'm going to put my light bulbs on dimmers anyway, so I want to make sure that I have rather too much than too little, and then I can always dim it. So I will take the 100 square feet, multiply it by the 20 foot candles. That is 2000. Now I know that I need 2000 lumens for this living room to reach that 20 foot candle requirement. Each one of my bulbs that I am specifying is 620 lumens. If I divide my 2000 lumens by the 620, which each bulb gives me, it'll tell me how many bulbs I would need in that space. Usually the required lumen calculations are done by engineers, lighting engineers. But we must have an idea for selections like we talked about before, because us interior designers are the only ones who will know the concept for the space. What type of a mood are we wanting to create? What are the colors? What are the finishes? We are the only ones. Not even the lighting designers know that. That is why interior designers stay in touch with all the different trades, and that's why we stay in the lighting design process till the end. Here are some of the IES required foot candles. These ones are commercial. Here are some residential ones. More commercial, more in depth. In here, if you look at the columns, this one is average maintained foot candles on a horizontal plane, and then range of maintained foot candles. I usually use the average on these ones. There are more. Then this one is, hold on, I'm trying to get the, see up top. This is a visual tool that we will be using for your project this week. It is a tool where we are entering your square footage for the room, ceiling height, and some of your color selections. And this tool will locate lights the fixtures for you, give you exactly the dimensions where to locate them, how many you need, and when you select the fixture, it will give you how many lumens, how many lamps are in this fixture. This one has 2 lamps, and each lamp creates 4500 lumens. So each one of these fixtures actually is 9000 lumens. I will create a second video where I will show you how to utilize this tool, because you will be using it for your projects. So this one concludes the lecture. Let me know if you have any questions. I will post a second video that goes over how you complete your project for this week.